Hi everybody, this is Jackie Yaki. I am so glad that you're with us today. I have two people sitting here, and I have Glenn and I have Patty, and they are original Kentuckians.
Absolutely.
I don't think I've ever met a couple yet that has been born and raised in Kentucky. Now, right now they own a computer company, but I'm going to start out first talking to Glenn, and I want to tell you, I really have not researched this. I like to be very spontaneous and learn as I go. Now, Glenn, were you a professional tennis player?
I was a professional tennis instructor, certified with U.S. Professional Tennis Association and Professional Tennis Registry. I was head pro at the Owl Creek Country Club, and I was interim coach at University of Louisville for the men's team. So I really didn't play professionally. I did attempt to play professionally, but I just wasn't good enough for that.
Well, you were a coach. Did you get a degree from U of L? Did they give you a scholarship? How did this happen?
Yes, I did. I was on scholarship playing tennis at U of L, and I got a degree in political science in 1983.
And so are you going to run for governor or anything around here?
That is not likely. Not likely. I'm actually I'm the technology director at our church, and I also have a business that my wife and I run in technology.
Right. And I think it's interesting, all three of us go to the same church, but I've never had a conversation together with Glenn and Patty. Now, Glenn, how did you get, I really like tennis. Now this will tell you, Agassi, that's how far back I go in, Jimmy Connors.
Right.
I loved them. I thought they were wonderful. I'm not into tennis as much anymore. But how did you learn?
Well, learned tennis. My older brother and sister played a little bit and played for their high school, and so I thought it would be really cool. And I started in the 7th grade at public high school here in Louisville. And the coaches just taught me all the basics and got me trained up and encouraged me, and that's how it all got started.
And did you just love it?
Oh, absolutely. I played day and night. I mean, if it was light outside, or if there were lights on a court, I was playing tennis.
Yes. Well, I'm a tennis player, but I mean, I can hit the ball back over the net, but nothing like this. Now, were you a good boy growing up? Did you have a good family? Or are you from a dysfunctional family?
No. My family were great. We grew up in the Catholic Church, and we went every Sunday. We went to Catholic Church and gave in the offering, and my dad did a lot of work for the Catholic Church as a volunteer, and so forth. So yeah, my family was a very good family, very strong.
So one day, I guess it's at the U of L, am I right? I think Jenny mentioned that some young man, is it Reggie?
It was actually Reggie's brother, Rex.
Rex.
Maybe who you're thinking of. I did play tennis with Reggie, and that's how I got to know Reggie and Rex and the family. Our senior year in high school, Reggie played for Doss High School, and I played for Western. We were kind of big rivals, and so we had to play one another, and we played a long match, and it was very close. So we started playing all the time together and played doubles together and so forth. That's how I got to know that family. But Rex is the guy who actually gave me a track one night, and that's how I got saved. That story is kind of amazing. Rex and I were practicing for a tournament. We practiced every day for weeks, and he called me up on a Thursday night and said, "Hey, tomorrow I play at 8 a.m. I said, "You know, I do too." And I played him. So after all this practice, and so he beat me, And that night I said, well, you know, I'm out of the tournament. I'll just go down to the bars. And so I went downtown to go to the bar, and there was Rex on the corner. And he said, hey, what are you doing? I said, let me give you something to read. And he handed me a gospel tract. And he said, man, don't go in that bar, man. You don't need to do all that. I said, well, you know, I mean, friends, you know, I wasn't saved. So, but he gave me this gospel tract. And if anybody else in the world would have handed me a gospel tract, I'd have went, and tossed it away. But it was Rex, and we were friends, and I was friends with his whole family. So I went into the bar, I got my beer, and I read the tract. And as I read it, I looked at it and I said, that's what I want to do. I want to get saved. I want to be born again. And I gave my life to God right there in the bar.
Were you by yourself?
I was by myself. My friends hadn't shown up yet. So I gave my life to Christ right there in the bar. And shortly after that, I called Rex and told him. And so he started taking me to church. And that's how I got in. I go to, you know, our church, Evangel. And that's how I started going to Evangel back in 1985.
It's not like you were proselyted. It was just you were following. You thought, this guy gave me some good news. I love people that give out tracts. You know, my mother and my grandmother, that was their thing. And you're one of the very first Kentuckians, but that got saved. And that means having Jesus change your life, sitting in a bar, reading about it. Now, I have a lot of Catholic friends, and I really know they understand and love the Lord. But why, being in church and everything, do you think, did you miss something along the way? Or do we not present the salvation? I've often wondered this.
I think just like any denomination, you have people that can go there and they hear the message, they listen and understand. I believed everything about Jesus from the Catholic Church. It was taught to me from very young. I believed all that. I believed it, but I had never got to the place where I said, Jesus, come into my heart, be my Lord and my Savior. I never got to that place until that night in the bar. But it's almost like God had set me up to do that, because all my life I had been taught, you know, the Gospels, the things that Jesus did. And I was even, you know, the Old Testament, the stories of the Old Testament, those things were all taught in the Catholic Church. And but I went, I believed, but I never received Christ. I never decided that I wanted to stop everything I was doing and do a 180 and head toward Jesus and toward the things of God and the things of the Bible until that night in the bar.
What was it in the track that made you, there must have been something that I'm not, what we say is born again. What was it, Glenn? I think this is compelling here.
Here's what the track said. And
tell me.
It said, did you know that it was Jesus himself who said you must be born again? Now, the term born again to me in those days meant some nut job was talking to me. I mean, that's just how I thought.
Right.
You know, born again and saved, all that was totally foreign to me. That's not language used in the Catholic Church much. At least back then it was not. And so I thought, you know, these are crazy people talking that. But when I read the tract that said, did you realize that Jesus was the one who said you must be born again? That grabbed my attention, because the one thing the Catholic Church believes is the same as we believe. Jesus is the Son of God. He is God. And that grabbed my attention, because I knew it had to be important if Jesus said it. And that's what really got me. And I read on, and it basically presented the gospel, telling that we all need to be saved. We've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. If we've disobeyed our parents one time, boom, we've sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We need Jesus. And once I saw that from what the tract was telling me, I just prayed the prayer at the end and gave my life to the Lord.
Right. Another thing I've noticed in various churches, and this is all churches, many of them don't ask you to come down, or to raise your hand and to accept Jesus. They say, well, I'm a good person, like you. You're in a good family. You're the coach over here at the U of L. You're doing all these things. So you're a good boy. But you just didn't realize. And I think I'm dealing with a lot of people, and you talk to them about the Lord, they get so excited, but you still kind of wonder, where are they? So I'm glad that you talked about that today. Glenn, if somebody sees you on TV, what would you say? Just ask Jesus? What would you say to Jesus, to God?
Well, I would encourage everyone to take the time to realize that you've made mistakes. They may not have been big mistakes, but you've not been perfect. None of us have been perfect. It's impossible to be perfect unless you are Jesus himself. He was perfect. And because we're not perfect, we need Jesus. Just to get to heaven, we need Jesus. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except by me. We have to receive Jesus in our lives. We have to determine that we want to follow him. We want to stop doing anything that's displeasing to him and start doing what is pleasing to him. Now, finding out what's displeasing to Jesus, that's in the Bible. We've got to begin to read the Bible to begin to figure out, give your life to the Lord, then begin to read the Word of God to find out what he wants you to do and how he wants you to live.
The other night I was watching EWTN, which is a local station here in Louisville, and Mother Angelica was on. I have met her. She's Catholic, and I mean, she made no bones about you have to accept the Lord. So I just hope that we can give some understanding that it's really not our goodness. And aren't you glad? It's the righteousness, it's what Jesus did for us. And we don't have to work. We want, when Jesus comes inside of us, we change and we want to please him. Well, that's not what we're really here. We have some exciting things because, Glenn, you now start. You're going to church with Rex, and you met the pastor. Now, when I came here almost 20 years ago, I remember they had a tennis team, I think. Oh, by the way, I wanted to ask you, at U of L, were you the champs?
We were not at that time. Our team was pretty good. The head coach at the time was Kevin Walsh, and I was his assistant coach or interim head coach, however you want to say it, while he was away pursuing his doctorate. And the goal was he was going to come back when he finished the doctorate and continue to be the head coach. He had built the team from being, the worst team in the worst conference. I mean, that's the way. I mean, we were terrible, but he had built the team up, or we'd got a lot of wins, and we were doing pretty well. And then he carried that on for a few years after I had left the coaching, and then he turned that all over to Rex at that point. And of course, Rex now has been able to build it up, and they're top 10 in the nation just about every year. They're very, very good now.
Rex has excelled. Is he still serving the Lord?
Oh, he is.
Oh,
yes.
But I didn't want to have to edit this here.
No, Rex became the coach, and God has just blessed him. And he works hard. It's not just sitting around waiting for God to do something. He's a very hard worker, and God has blessed him and brought the team along. It's been an amazing thing for me to see, from where we were at back then to where their team is at now is amazing.
Was he just thrilled when you called him?
He was very excited. You know, he's got a heart for souls, and you have to have a heart for souls if you're going to go downtown in the middle of the night and distribute tracts. So he was very happy and very glad that he helped me get into a solid church.
So you get in this church, and I'm sure, knowing Pastor Rogers, he says, here is someone, and you're a young, single guy, and did he start working on you, maybe about marriage?
Pastor's well known in the church for drawing up lists for his single folks. He always had a list of the single ladies in the church that he gave to me, and he had a list that he gave to my wife of the single guys, and I was on her list and she was on my list, and he still does that as far as I know, but he ended up picking a really good match here when we found one another.
This was a winning match, by the way.
It was.
Now let's meet Mrs. Brown. Patty, hi. We haven't been ignoring you at all. But how many years ago was it when Glenn walked into that church? Do you remember him coming in?
I do remember him coming in. Actually, when he first came in was in '85. And I was like 14, 15 when he first came in. And I noticed him, but I knew he was too old for me at the time. And then when actually he was old enough and Pastor started giving me the list, because I had started working at WJIE radio at the time. And so here comes Pastor with his list. And so my first comment was, he's too old, he's too short. But I knew that I kind of liked him. And I thought, well, I'll wait. And so we just kept kind of passing each other in the hallway, and we just kind of look at each other. And so one night at a concert, we kind of passed each other, and he asked me for a pen. And I thought that was kind of cool. And so I gave him a pen, and we kind of talked just for a split second. And then I went home and told my mom, I said, hey, you know, that Glenn Brown, the one that Pastor Wayman would get him up in church and he would tell his testimony.
But this is Wayman, right?
Yeah,
yes.
Pastor Wayman would always get him up and have him tell his testimony in service. And then I would listen to his testimony, and I would think, he's pretty cool. And so, but Pastor Bob would always have us have him give his testimony also, and he was on staff at the time. And so I thought that was just, he was a good looking guy. So we got, one night I walked into church, and everybody kept kind of saying, oh, he's cute. And so I thought that was neat. So we went to church one night, it was one Sunday night, and they were having a wedding. And so I go up and I sit down and I look up, and there he is getting married. And I thought,
oh
no.
I
lost it.
He was the groom?
He was the groom.
Oh no.
And so I thought, okay,
oh, this is
I'm
not
done, you know. And so I'm sitting there, and so they're waiting for the bride to come down. You know, all the bridesmaids have went down. And so the girls are sitting, my friends are sitting behind me, and they're poking me, so why don't you get up and go down? And I'm like, no, y'all are crazy, you know. And so Pastor's sitting there, and he's going, where's the bride? And so after the wedding, he comes back and he asked me out. And I'm like, okay, the groom is asking me out.
Boy, this is the shortest marriage I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
This one didn't last very long.
No, it didn't. Here he is up there in his nice little white tux, and he comes back and he asks me out. And I was like, okay. I said yes.
And he really
came and asked me out. After his wedding.
Did you really get married?
No.
It was actually it was an illustrated sermon that Pastor was doing, and I was the groom in the illustrated sermon. And I would also want to point out that she said I started coming to church when she was 15, and then we started talking. This was 6 years later when we started talking. She was 21.
Yes.
At that time. Because that sounded I was like, oh, 15. That's a little bit
Yeah.
odd. We actually started talking about 6 years after I'd been to the church.
Yes.
She was 21 years old. First time I'd talked to her and asked her out.
Yeah, that was February the 17th when he asked me out. We actually went out on February the 20th for the first time. And when we went out, both of us, when he found out I was 21, his mouth dropped and I saw it drop. My mouth dropped when I found out he was 30. And
You were 9 years older.
9 years older.
And I thought, I'm not going. I will not go out with him again. And before we even got out of that luncheon at Ryan's, he asked me out again. And we went out again.
There you are, hooked.
Yeah, the next night we went out again to a kid's skate because he was the children's pastor. And when I was young, I didn't even realize this, because when I was young, God had spoke to me and he said, you will marry a youth pastor. He said, we'll have black curly hair. And I didn't even realize. And when I was at that skating ring that night, I looked at him and I was like, oh my Lord. He's a youth pastor. He's got black curly hair. And I was like, okay. And it kind of scared me because I wasn't ready for a relationship. So then both of us were still kind of really skittish at each other. So then we went out. He asked me out again. So we went out again that Friday night. So we went to a WJIE function. And my sister decided to play a prank on us. And she comes over and she decorates his car, just married.
Oh.
I was so embarrassed. So while we decided to play a prank back on her, while we were doing that, I'm telling him, I do not want a relationship. I do not want a date. And so I'm giving him this list of things I do not want to do. You know, and I know he's thinking I'm crazy.
Oh, I think it's probably motivating him. Is that right? You're in the hunt here.
Must have been.
Do you
'cause here
like
we are.
her?
Oh,
Did
yeah.
you-
Oh, I did. Yes, I did.
And you watched her through the years? This pretty little 15-year-old, now in
Not-
6 years?
I did not notice her
You
at
didn't?
15. No.
No, not at 15, but through the years.
Well, here's the thing.
She must be getting prettier.
I first
and-
met her when she was 21.
Yeah.
We went out in February. We were married that same year, August 3rd.
5 months later.
And now
Together.
it's 26 years later,
Mhm.
and she's still awesome and more awesome than she was back then. I mean, I love her, this girl, so much. She is perfect for me.
I do too. And you know, Patty, Glenn works for us at times, and I've noticed several things. And I wondered how he might respond. You watch people that come in and work. I know he's very active. He's just all the time for Pastor Rogers. But he is so easy. He's got a great person, a peace kind of
Yes.
comes over him. I love that about you, Glenn. Patty, I'm going to go back to one question. The question is, I like to talk to an audience that might not understand everything we're saying. You said God spoke to you. He was going to have dark curly hair. He was going to be a youth pastor, on and on. Now, on The View, they just had, it made headlines almost, where the Vice President Pence, said God had spoken to him, and Joy Behar just had a fit and said, God just, like, they're out to lunch. It's like you thinking about the Jesus people giving out these tracts. Tell me how you knew that God spoke this.
It was something that you knew in your spirit. It was like all of a sudden something came in your heart and you knew that's what God had for you. I was at a very young age. It was before I'd ever met him. I was praying what God wanted for me. And I knew that that's what God had for me. It was a youth ministry at the time. And I liked dark curly hair. And God said, that's what I've got for you. And he always gives you the desire of your heart. my favorite scripture was Psalms 37:4-5. And it says, let's see if I can remember it right. It says,
Delight
yourself also in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your ways unto him, and he will bring it to pass. And was on our wedding invitation. But that's just something that just God gives you the exact desire of your heart. Even if it's something that you don't even know, this is the desire of your heart. And that was the desire of my heart. And Glenn has been the desire of my heart. And I've been in love with him. And at first I wouldn't tell him I love him. He would say it to me and I was just like, no, I'm not telling him yet. And it was on Easter. I went and got him a card. And he didn't want me to bring the dog we had a dog, her name was Tiffy. And he didn't want me to bring her to the apartment. And I didn't. I went and gave him a card, and I handed him the card, and he said, "It says I love you, doesn't it?" And I said, "Yes."
Oh.
It was just like he knew. But, God just blessed us to put us together. And he put us together to work together.
Now, we're going to have to re-air this. We're going to air this right away, but we must re-air this on Valentine's Day. This is a true love story. People need to know the marriages break up. There's a famous producer right here that I heard was married 42 years, and he does great films and things. He's somewhere here in Kentucky, but it's very impressive. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to come back because as in life, everything can change.
Yes.
You can have trials.
Yes.
Now, I want you to watch our next program on this. We're going to have Glenn and Patty Brown back on. I'm so excited. They're a great blessing. Thank you for being with us today, and pray for the peace of Jerusalem.